What happens when a CEO works the graveyard shift to reconnect with his staff and uncover something no one was ever supposed to see? Michael Langston had spent the last 6 years rebuilding the reputation of a waste disposal services company he bought in a fire sale. When he first got it, the business had a bad name: sloppy drivers, missed pickups, even fines from environmental regulators. He cleaned house, modernized operations, and expanded to 8 locations across the state. Things were finally running smooth, or so he thought. It was Michael's assistant, a quiet kid named Riley from finance, who mentioned something odd during a weekly report. The numbers from Site 5 don't match up. They're reporting full pickups, but landfill fees are too low. Could be a billing glitch? Michael didn't like second-hand answers, and he hated the idea someone might be messing with things again. He hadn't personally visited Site 5 in over a year. The overnight crew there had all been hired after that. It was a suburban drop-off and temporary storage site that handled late-night industrial pickups from small factories. The kind of place that ran quiet until something went wrong. He decided to go in himself. The plan was simple. He'd pose as a new night shift temp. No one at Site 5 had ever met him. It was a corporate-run branch, and the managers usually dealt with district oversight. Michael had a full beard grown out, safety glasses, a company beanie, and the kind of thick jacket all the workers wore. His ID badge read Tom L. He'd trained for a few days at Site 3 to learn the ropes and not look clueless. At 10 p.m. sharp, he walked into Site 5's locker room. "Hey, you the new guy?" a stocky man with a buzz cut asked. "Yeah, Tom. They told me to check in here for the night shift." "Cool. I'm Darren, shift lead. Let's get you set up." Michael followed Darren to the yard. The place was dim, just enough lighting to move around. For big dumpsters lined the back fence. A loader sat idle. 2 other crew members were there, a wiry guy named Kenny and a woman named Felicia, maybe mid-20s, with a sharp voice and fast hands. She barely looked up when Michael was introduced. By midnight, Michael had already seen signs that things weren't right. "Don't worry about sorting every barrel," Kenny said, tossing a half-labeled drum onto a pallet. "They don't check this stuff." "Who's they?" Michael asked. "Exactly," Kenny laughed. Felicia rolled her eyes. "Just do what Darren says and keep your head down. It's not worth asking questions." Later that night, a flatbed truck pulled in. The driver looked nervous. He handed Darren a slip and left fast. Darren waved Michael over. "Help me with this one," he said. "We move this to the south lot. No scanning, no tags." Michael glanced down. The barrels were red. No labels. Smelled sharp chemical. "What's in these?" Darren didn't answer. Just said corporate knows. "Don't worry about it." But Michael knew one thing: those barrels were definitely hazardous. Unmarked drums weren't just a policy violation. They were illegal. At break, he sat alone behind the storage containers, pretending to smoke. Felicia walked by, then doubled back. "You don't talk much," she said. "Just trying to keep my job," he shrugged. She hesitated. "You asked about the red barrels." "Don't. I've been here 8 months. Saw what happened to the last guy who pushed back." "What happened?" "Let's just say he doesn't work here anymore." Darren called it budget restructuring. Her voice was tight. "I need this job. I got a little boy. I can't risk it." Michael nodded. "What's his name?" "Zion. He's 5. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked down at his gloves. He thought about his own daughter, grown now, and how many nights he missed when she was that age. By the end of the shift, Michael had seen enough. The red barrels, the skipped logs, the way Darren barked at people and cut corners. It wasn't just shady. It was dangerous. But he wasn't going to blow his cover yet. He needed proof. Real proof. So he came back the next night. And the next. On the 3rd night, a barrel leaked. A thin, greenish fluid dripped onto the pavement. Kenny grabbed a bag of cat litter and tossed it over like it was nothing. "Don't tell anyone," Darren muttered to Michael. "We handle these things in-house." Michael didn't respond. He just pulled out his phone when no one was looking snapped a photo, and tucked it back into his jacket. The next morning, after his shift ended, Michael didn't go home. He drove straight to the district office. Michael waited in the parking lot outside the district office until the lights inside flicked on just past 6 in the morning. He walked in through the side entrance using his executive keycard, head down, still dressed in the same layered uniform from the graveyard shift. His boots tracked dried clay dust across the linoleum. No one recognized him. That was exactly what he wanted. He bypassed the floor manager's bullpen and entered the compliance office. Inside, Janet Warner was already at her desk, sipping tea and reviewing permit files. She looked up, confused. "Tom." Michael shut the door behind him and took off his beanie. "It's me." Janet blinked, then leaned back slowly. "Michael? What the hell?" He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and laid it face up on her desk. Photos of unmarked chemical barrels, close-ups of the leaking fluid, and time-stamped footage of the illegal drop-offs played in sequence. Her expression shifted from confusion to something sharper. "That's Site 5, she said quietly. He nodded. "It gets worse. Darren's running it like his own dumping ground. Barrels with no manifests. Drivers not logging anything. There's a whole second operation happening after hours." Janet looked visibly unsettled. "We passed an EPA spot audit 3 months ago. They're hiding it well. The graveyard crew handles the barrels. Day shift never sees them. They store the worst of it behind the south fence and move it before sunrise. And you're sure corporate didn't approve any of this?" "I own the company, Janet. If I didn't sign off on it, no one did." She stood up, locked the office door, then sat again. "Okay. We need to escalate this immediately. I'll start drafting the internal report. But if there's hazardous waste involved, we also need to notify the city environmental office." Quietly. "No names yet," he said. "I want to see who else is in on it." Janet nodded. "Understood. But one thing, if this gets out of hand, we're looking at criminal risk. For them. And possibly for us if we don't act fast. I'll go back tonight. One more shift." She frowned. "You sure? I want to see how deep it goes. Then I'll make the call." He left the office without saying anything more. That night, he returned to Site 5 just before 10. A different energy hung in the air, more tense, less casual. Kenny was already there, pacing near the forklift. Felicia arrived late, looking tired. Her shoulders slumped as she pulled her gloves on. Darren, for once, wasn't waiting out front. Inside the locker room, Michael found him on the phone. "No, listen, just get it here before midnight. Same lot. No tags this time." Michael stepped past without a word. Darren hung up and followed him out. "Hey, Tom. Where's your gear? We got a load coming in hot and I need you moving fast tonight." Michael kept his tone neutral. "You got it." The shift started with rerouted pickups. 3 trucks came in instead of the usual one. All unmarked. Darren barked orders, more aggressive than usual. "Don't scan anything. Just stack and tarp. We'll move it out before sunrise." Michael noticed something different. Kenny seemed jumpier. He dropped a barrel off the pallet, froze, then glanced over his shoulder like someone was watching. When Michael offered to help, he waved him off. "You don't want to get mixed up in this," Kenny muttered. Michael leaned in. "Then maybe tell me what's really going on." Kenny's eyes darted toward the office. "Darren's not running this alone. Someone higher up's involved. He keeps name-dropping a regional guy, Mendoza. Says he's got protection." Michael hadn't heard that name in years. Arturo Mendoza had been with the company before Michael bought it, a holdover from the old ownership. He was supposed to be a logistics advisor, reassigned after several complaints. But nothing had ever stuck. "How often is he around?" Michael asked. "Never see him. But Darren talks like they're tight." Michael filed it away. Another layer. Another name. By 1 in the morning, a new truck rolled in. This one different, larger, with out-of-state plates. The driver stayed behind the wheel. Darren and Kenny offloaded it fast. No receipts changed hands. Felicia stood back near the fence, arms crossed, not helping. Michael walked over. "You okay?" She glanced at the truck, then at him. "That man's not from any of our vendors. I've worked with all of them. This guy? Never seen him before. You said you needed this job. I do. But you're not touching that load. She hesitated. It's not right. And I'm not losing my life over someone else's mess. You shouldn't have to. A shout cut through the yard. Darren was yelling at Kenny loud enough that it echoed against the warehouse wall. You drop one more drum and I'll have you reassigned to the docks. You think I won't? Kenny didn't answer. His hands trembled. Michael stepped forward. Back off. It was an accident. Darren turned. His eyes narrowed. You don't speak unless I tell you to. Michael walked closer. You don't talk to people like that. Not here. Darren squared up. You want to test that? Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out his ID badge, the real one. The room went still. Even the truck driver stopped mid-step. I think I just did, Michael said. Darren's expression fractured, one part confusion, one part disbelief. You're Michael Langston, owner, and you're done. He turned toward Kenny. Are you okay? Kenny nodded, eyes wide. Felicia looked frozen. Michael turned back to Darren. You're relieved. Right now. Hand over your keys and leave the premises. Darren's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. You've been hiding illegal waste, threatening staff, falsifying records, and endangering lives. That ends tonight. Darren threw his keyring onto the ground and walked off without another word. Michael faced the rest of the crew. Anyone else involved in this has a choice. Come forward now, or deal with the consequences when legal steps follow. Felicia stepped forward first. I'm not part of it. I never touched those barrels. Kenny followed. Me neither. I've been afraid to say anything, but I didn't sign up for this. Michael nodded. I believe you, but from here on, everything changes. This site's shutting down until a full investigation is complete. You'll both be reassigned with full pay during the review. You did the right thing tonight. They didn't speak. Just stood there stunned. The truck idled behind them. Michael turned to the driver. Leave. Now. And don't come back. The man drove off without hesitation. By sunrise, environmental enforcement had arrived quietly as requested. Michael and Janet walked them through everything. Photos, logs, chain of custody evidence. The barrels were impounded. The lot was sealed. Michael made 2 calls that morning, one to HR, instructing them to prepare immediate termination paperwork for Darren and a full investigation into Mendoza's role. The second was to legal counsel. Not to protect himself, but to make sure if anyone tried to bury this, they wouldn't get far. Before he left Site 5, Michael checked in with Felicia one last time as she gathered her things. You heading home? She nodded. I guess I'll sleep for real this time. He paused. I want to talk to you again later. Not about this. About your future here. You've got instincts we need more of. Her face didn't change, but her voice softened. Thanks. He turned toward Kenny. Same goes for you. Go home. Rest. Kenny gave a tired salute, more habit than humor. Copy that. As they left, Michael stood alone near the south fence, just beyond where the last red barrel had been. For the first time in days, the yard was quiet. No shortcuts. No shadows. Just the cold air and the weight of everything he now knew. Michael arrived at headquarters just after noon. He hadn't slept since the reveal. His jacket still carried the sharp, acrid scent from the yard, and his boots left faint, chalky prints down the hallway carpet. Every step felt heavier than the last, but his mind was clear. There was no decision left to make. He stepped into the third-floor operations boardroom where Janet and the legal team were already waiting. The blinds were drawn, and a stack of internal audit files sat between them. No one made small talk. Arturo Mendoza's involvement is more than casual, Janet began. We pulled vehicle access logs and warehouse dispatch records. His name shows up tied to Site 5's overnight loadouts for the last 7 months. Almost all under the radar. He's using his old clearance, Michael said. Correct. And bypassing the normal scheduling system. We believe he coordinated at least 24 undocumented drop-offs. Possibly more. Michael didn't sit. Where's he now? Field office in Stockton. He's on the calendar for a logistics review meeting tomorrow. Cancel it. I want him here. Today. Janet looked over at the attorney, who gave a tight nod. Legally, we're within our rights to summon him for an internal hearing. But if he refuses, he won't, Michael said. He'll show. He won't want to risk losing whatever else he's hiding. 3 hours later, Arturo Mendoza walked through the doors of the same boardroom, wearing a pressed shirt and a polished expression. He looked around the room, then took a slow breath. Didn't expect a full house, he said. Something going on? Michael stood just behind the head of the table, arms crossed. You tell us. You've been coordinating unauthorized waste transfers through Site 5, using old clearance codes, working with a terminated shift manager. We have documentation, timestamps, and witness statements. Arturo's expression didn't crack. I've done nothing illegal. That's not what I said. I said unauthorized, which means you acted outside any approved protocol. And based on what we found, you endangered our entire operation. Arturo reached for the chair but didn't sit. I was cleaning up a mess. Your acquisition left gaps contracts that weren't closed out properly. Some vendors still had waste to move, and I made sure it didn't pile up. You bypassed safety checks. You allowed unmarked chemicals to be stored overnight without proper containment. You exposed employees to unknown substances. That's not a cleanup, that's negligence. Arturo's voice dropped. Those vendors had leverage. They threatened legal action if we didn't honor the terms. I gave them a backdoor to avoid a lawsuit. Michael stepped forward. You gave them a reason to think we were still the company they used to deal with. But we're not. And we don't hide waste in the dark. Arturo didn't respond. You're relieved of all responsibilities. Effective immediately. Your severance is under review pending legal outcomes. You'll be escorted out before the hour. Arturo's mouth pressed into a line. He turned without arguing and walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Michael didn't sit. Janet, full audit of every site Arturo touched in the last year. I want staffing logs, vendor contacts, billing records. If there's more, I want it found now. She nodded. Already started. We'll prioritize the remote yards, those had the least oversight. By the next morning, crews arrived at Site 5 to begin remediation. Environmental consultants in white coveralls roamed the grounds, documenting soil saturation and containment breaches. Michael stood outside the gate with a clipboard and a thermos of burnt coffee. He didn't speak unless asked. He just watched. Inside, Felicia and Kenny were back, temporarily reassigned to the intake center at Site 2. Michael met them before their shift. I know this isn't where you normally work, he said, but I want both of you close while we sort things. You'll stay on payroll with full hours. Felicia gave a small nod. Appreciate that. I meant what I said to you both. You showed integrity when it counted. That doesn't go unnoticed. Kenny looked up from his safety harness. What happens to the others? Anyone who looked away is being reviewed. But we're starting with the ones who made the calls. You weren't one of them. Felicia adjusted her gloves. How long until Site 5 opens again? Depends on the soil report. Could be weeks. She didn't ask more. Later that week, Michael scheduled a visit to each of the 7 remaining sites. No advance notice. No PR team. Just him, a spare uniform, and a notebook. He sat through safety briefings, walked the sorting lines, and watched how managers spoke when they didn't think anyone was watching. At Site 3, a driver named Becca asked him why he was suddenly everywhere. Trying to remember what this job actually feels like, he said. You forget. For a while, yeah. She cracked her knuckles. Well, it's mostly sore knees and cold hands. And occasionally some guy yelling into a walkie about missing forklift keys. He laughed once. Accurate. At Site 6, he pulled a floor supervisor aside after hearing a joke that crossed a line. He didn't raise his voice. Just looked the man in the eye and said, that doesn't happen again. Not in this building. Or you won't be in this building. The man didn't argue. Didn't need to. By the end of the week, Michael returned to headquarters with a list of names not of people to fire, but people to promote. Workers who stayed late without being asked. Team leads who made sure new hires weren't thrown into chaos. Drivers who flagged discrepancies instead of ignoring them. He handed the list to Janet. Start building leadership tracks around these people. I want them in positions where they can do more. You sure you want to move this fast? Yes. We waited long enough. That afternoon, Michael held a call with all regional managers. No slides. No scripts. I went looking for one problem, he said. But what I found was a culture that let people think shortcuts were acceptable. It ends now. We're rewriting the chain of responsibility. No more silos. If you see something wrong, you act. If you're afraid to do that, then you shouldn't be here. No one interrupted. We're not just fixing Site 5. We're fixing the system that allowed it to happen. That means better training, more direct oversight, and fewer layers between what's said and what's done. He paused. And if I have to come back undercover again, I will. The call ended without applause. Just silence. The kind that comes when people know the tone has changed for good. That night, Michael sat alone in his office. The waste disposal company he'd bought years ago had always needed repairs, but this was the first time he realized how fragile the culture had remained beneath the surface. He opened his laptop and started drafting a new onboarding module. Not about safety procedures or route logistics. This one was about ethics. Real-life case studies from their own operations. Names withheld. Mistakes laid bare. Because the only way to build something worth keeping was to be honest about the parts that nearly broke it. 2 weeks had passed since Site 5 was shut down, and the fallout from the illegal waste operation began to ripple through the company. The environmental cleanup was still ongoing, supervised daily by third-party regulators with no ties to the company. Soil samples were being taken every morning, and the early results confirmed what Michael had feared: there were long-term containment issues. The site wouldn't be operational again for months, and it would cost hundreds of thousands to restore it safely. But that wasn't his priority anymore. Michael was focused on rebuilding the culture that had allowed danger and silence to take root. He refused to issue a hollow company-wide memo. Instead, he was spending his days in the field and his nights reviewing site reports, employee logs, and internal complaints that had been buried under middle management for too long. At Site 2, he met with a group of drivers in the break room before dawn. Not for a speech, just to listen. Sometimes I don't report stuff because it just disappears, said a woman in her 40s with oil-stained sleeves. You file it, nothing happens. Next week, you're still hauling a truck with bad brakes. What happens when you bring it up in person? Michael asked. Same thing. They say, we'll log it. And that's it. I stopped wasting the ink. Another driver added, unless you raise hell, no one moves. But yelling gets you a reputation fast. Michael wrote nothing down during the conversation. He didn't need to. The patterns were clear. Fear of retaliation, broken accountability lines, and a culture that rewarded silence more than honesty. That afternoon, he convened a closed-door meeting with the entire district management team. No assistants, no legal observers, just the people responsible for supervising operations across all sites. You've all seen the fallout from Site 5, he said, standing at the head of the table. I'm not here to rehash it. I'm here to ask one question. Who among you knew something was wrong and said nothing? No one spoke. He scanned the room. I'm not looking for confessions. I'm looking for integrity. If you saw signs, skipped inspections, complaints from staff, inventory gaps, and passed them down the chain instead of acting, you're part of the problem. A younger manager at the far end of the table cleared his throat. We're trained to escalate through proper channels. If we go around them, we get flagged for insubordination. Michael locked eyes with him. If the proper channels protect the wrong people, they're not proper. And they changed today. He handed out a single-page restructure plan. No fluff. Just bullet points. A new compliance officer would be assigned to each site, reporting directly to a rotating committee of cross-site employees, not to site managers. Anonymous complaint tracking would now trigger mandatory reviews, not optional ones. And every manager would be evaluated not just on operational metrics, but on safety escalation and employee retention. Anyone caught retaliating against whistleblowers would be terminated immediately. "I'm not asking you to buy into this," Michael said. "I'm telling you this is how it will work from now on. If that's a problem, come see me by the end of the day." No one did. That weekend, Michael invited Felicia and Kenny to headquarters. Not to revisit anything from Site 5, they had already given full testimony to the legal and compliance teams. This was about something else. He met them in a small conference room, plain walls, no cameras. "I've been reviewing internal training records," he said, "and both of you scored in the top percentile during your onboarding. You've clocked in early, picked up shifts, and flagged safety issues even when it cost you." Felicia kept her hands folded. "We didn't do anything special. We just didn't want to get hurt. Or see someone else get hurt." "That's exactly what leadership is," Michael said. "I'd like you both to consider stepping into new roles." He slid 2 folders across the table. Inside were job descriptions: Felicia as a safety coordinator, Kenny as a training liaison for new hires. Neither role was window dressing. They'd be the first line of defense at their respective sites, with real authority to halt operations if something didn't feel right. Kenny blinked slowly. "You're serious?" "I barely got through high school. So did half the people in the room when I pitched to investors the first time," Michael said. "This isn't about degrees. It's about judgment. And you've earned my trust." Felicia opened the folder, scanning the bullet points. "Will we still be on the floor?" Michael nodded. "Absolutely. These aren't office jobs. You'll be reporting from within the crews. That's what makes it work." Neither of them gave a dramatic answer. They just nodded, slowly, like people beginning to believe something might actually change. Over the next month, the impact of the reforms began to show. At Site 4, a driver reported a container that didn't match its manifest, something that would have been ignored weeks earlier. This time, the complaint triggered a site-wide pause and a full audit of the receiving process. The discrepancy turned out to be clerical, but the fact that it had been taken seriously sent a message. At Site 7, a temp flagged a supervisor for skipping routine gear inspections. The report went straight to the new compliance lead, who conducted interviews and confirmed the violation. The supervisor was removed the same day. Michael didn't broadcast these decisions. He let the actions speak. In private, he continued checking in with site teams. Not for show. For accountability. One evening, he waited outside the locker room at Site 2 until the last pickup crew clocked out. "You still good in the new role?" he asked Felicia as she exited. She adjusted the strap on her safety vest. "I'm not used to people listening when I talk. But yeah, you think people trust the process now?" "Not yet," she said. "But they're watching. And they're not walking away as fast." Michael nodded. "That's how it starts." He didn't offer a speech, just walked with her to the lot. The night air was damp and the lot lights buzzed faintly overhead. Before they parted, she asked, "You ever think about how close it got?" "Every day," he said. Weeks later, the environmental team cleared part of Site 5 for structural rehab. The damage had been worse in the northwest quadrant, the same section where the red barrels had first been stored. But the cleanup was progressing. Slowly, thoroughly. Michael visited the site alone one morning, walking the perimeter with a hard hat and clipboard. He didn't speak to the contractors, just observed. Along the fence line, a new sign had been installed: "Authorized access only. Zero tolerance for violations." It wasn't marketing. It was policy now. He paused beneath the sign, looking over the lot that had once hidden so much. The truth was never going to be convenient. It never showed up in neat reports or polite meetings. It was messy, came at night. It leaked through seams. And still, when faced, there was always a chance to fix it. Not with slogans, with action. And the will to keep showing up long after the cameras were gone and the headlines faded, to make sure the people who kept the company running were never left in the dark again.